How about the note that the character's not relatable?
You know, the idea that a character is not relatable, or I didn't care about the characters, that's probably the #1 note that we hear thrown around Hollywood. And I would say that that's also the #1 note that new writers are given when they're working with material. And there are a lot of different things that can contribute to this idea that a character isn't likable or relatable. And that's why we have books like Save the Cat, where in the title that's addressing that very thing. But at the same time, what we like to do is we like to go back to what Aristotle teaches about what a character is. And we feel like so many people right now are ignoring classic storytelling and ignoring the basics of character. And if they only would look at what has been taught over the thousands of years about character, they could probably address this question.
Yeah, it's really not rocket science for all of the fact that it is the thing that scuttles most scripts. Aristotle wrote 2,500 years ago in the Poetics that if you want the audience to have an eventual cathartic experience in your story, that you need to have that character be good, be appropriate, be consistent, and be universal, right? So what does that mean, right? The main character, the protagonist, needs to be oriented towards a good quest, that the audience needs to sign on and say, yeah, that's worth going for there. So, look at the Odyssey, this famous Greek. What does he want? He wants to get home. He wants to be with his wife. That's a good quest. And the audience goes, yeah. So one way to scuttle your character right away, suppose their quest is, I want to make $1 million. I want to be the richest stockbroker on Wall Street. The audience goes, right? So we don't care now, right? Or you give them some kind of a goal that just is like weird or dark or hateful, and now the audience goes, yeah, I don't sign on to that, and so now they disconnect, right? They need to be appropriate. That is, the main character in a story needs to have a substitutional role for the audience themselves. They need to be somebody that we feel safe with to say, that's going to be me in the story. I'm going to travel through that person's experience in the story as though it was mine. That's why we laugh and cry and feel scared at what's happening on a flat screen, because we've actually moved into that character's life, if it's working. So if you make the character so off-puttingly weird that the audience goes, yeah, I'm not that guy. Think about it. The audience is, people are sheep. If somebody comes in and looks goofy and kind of strange, nobody's like, everyone's like, give that guy some room, right? Mm-hmm. So this is a tricky thing in a movie, because you need your character to be quirky and better than the real. They need to be intriguing and interesting and a little bit smarter, or good at something the audience isn't, but they can't be off-puttingly weird so the audience feels nervous about them. Now you can absolutely have characters in the movie who are that, but not the protagonist. The main one through whom we travel, who's going to stand in for us, has to be somebody that we feel safe with, right? Appropriate.
Yeah, and anti-heroes are really popular right now, and we generally recommend for beginner writers to avoid the anti-hero genre, typically because it just requires so much skill to create a character who is an anti-hero, who is also relatable, who is also likable. And of course, Walter White from Breaking Bad is perhaps the best example ever of an anti-hero who works, but it's because he has a very high stakes relatable background he starts out as a real human being, more or less, and then he turns into a monster.
Yeah, and that leads to the third thing Aristotle talks about, consistency, that we can know why somebody is doing what they're doing. So their motivations become huge, and that we understand their motivations. So the way to disconnect your character from your audience, to make them not care, is if you never really clarify, what do they want? What do they want? What are they trying to do? Why are they doing what they're doing? If I don't ever understand why a character makes a choice on the screen, then yeah, I disengage. So that consistency becomes huge to make me relate. And then the last one, what Aristotle calls true, that this person's struggling with a universal human struggle that could be mine too. So one of the problems in a lot of movies is the struggle is so externalized to the particular world. You know, it's like, wow, this is about a nuclear scientist who's trying to blow up an asteroid. And it's like, well, why do I care about that? I will never do that. So what has to happen is it has to be, yes, he needs to blow up the asteroid because it's the way for him to show his son that he isn't a failure. And it's like, oh, now it's my story, right? But see, the writer who doesn't make that, find that underlying universal story that's common to all people, now I never care. And we see this again, you know, the blockbuster era of Hollywood, it's so much about big things happening in weird, contrived places, and yet they don't ever make that connection to how is this a story that everyone in every time in every place could sign on to.